Hello, and welcome to the Common Hour. My name is Justin Hopkins, and I am the Assistant Director of the Writing Center, Senior Teaching Professor of English, and Chair of the Common Hour Committee, along with my co-chair this fall, Rachel Anderson-Rayburn. I'd like to introduce our ASL interpreter, Emily Phipps. Thank you, Emily, for interpreting for us at Common Hour. Please note that if you need to change your screen view to include Emily as you watch, you can adjust the screen display mode in the small box labeled View towards the upper right of the Zoom window. And you can enable the CC closed captioning for video shown. A very warm welcome to all. The Common Hour is an unique and inclusive program that brings the Franklin and Marshall community together weekly during the academic year for culturally and intellectually enriching events. It is the only regularly scheduled event that unites students, faculty, and staff, and invites the larger community to join us. Throughout the pandemic, the Common Hour has continued to provide a gathering space and a source of inspiration, education, and compelling discussion for the F&M community and beyond. Next week's Common Hour is entitled Unflattening: Thinking in Comics, presented by Nick Susanis, Associate Professor of Humanities and Liberal Studies at San Francisco State University, and we hope you'll join us for that. Please follow Common Hour on our webpage, the Presence events calendar, and our F&M Common Hour Facebook and Instagram pages. During today's event, Zoom viewers can submit questions for our speaker via the Q&A feature. And please indicate your affiliation with the college if you like, but we won't use any names. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the proposer of today's event, Tom Simpson, F&M's Sustainability Coordinator. Hello, Tom.
Thanks, Justin. Douglas Smith, F&M class of 2009, serves as Chief Planner within Lancaster City's Department of Community Planning and Economic Development. He oversees the Planning Bureau, which includes comprehensive planning, land development, historic preservation, zoning, floodplain review, and the City Redevelopment Authority, among other tasks. Douglas ensures that these programs are kept current and consistent with administration goals, state laws, strategic initiatives, and modern community planning and urban design practices. He serves as a liaison to the city and county planning commissions, Traffic Commission, and other community groups. He is also one of the driving forces behind the city's climate action plan, greenhouse gas inventory, and other greening efforts in the city. He previously served as senior planner and sustainability planner at the City of Lancaster. He holds a bachelor's degree in environmental science from F&M and a master's degree in urban and regional planning from the University of Michigan. I might add that he is also well-traveled and a student of what he sees in other cities and areas of the world. He is an accomplished musician, gardener, bicycle rider, and one who walks the sustainability walk. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Douglas Smith.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. And Tom, thank you for that very warm welcome. It's really an honor to be invited to speak with you all for F&M's Common Hour. I'm really humbled to be counted among such an esteemed group of speakers, including Bill McKibben, one of my personal favorites, who I saw speak some years ago. Thank you, Tom Simpson, for pitching this talk, Candace Ripper for coordinating, Josh, and all others who are behind the scenes and helping with this, and especially to all of you for attending today's talk. Again, my name is Douglas Smith. I'm the Chief Planner for the City of Lancaster's Planning Bureau, and I'm here to talk to you about urban planning. I work with the City of Lancaster, and in particular, the city's upcoming comprehensive plan. Just give me one moment, and I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can I just get confirmation that that's displayed correctly?
Yes, we can see it.
Excellent, thank you so much. So Planning Our Future Lancaster is the name of the comprehensive planning process that we are undergoing. My talk today is titled Working Towards a Green, Safe, and Equitable City. So just a note on our agenda, I'm going to talk to you about who I am, what urban planning is, what a comprehensive plan is, why and how is the community involved, and what are your perspectives? And then we'll end with a question and answer session. So I graduated Franklin Marshall in 2009 with degrees in environmental science and music, just in time for the Great Recession that followed the housing market collapse. For several years, I continued science research with F&M professors Bob Walters and Dorothy Merritz on water and soil quality while taking multiple odd jobs in the community. I served as farmers market manager, church pianist and organist, touring musician, and farmed with some Amish farms. During those years, I really learned to love the walkability and mixed use nature of the city of Lancaster, living without a car during all of my 20s. This really aligned with my interests in the environment and promoting local economy. And ultimately, this led me down a path towards the diverse profession of urban planning. I returned to Lancaster after receiving my master's degree from the University of Michigan, where I studied urban planning and real estate development. I was keen on being at the table for development conversations and helping to bring the sustainability perspective to those spaces. I returned to Lancaster for initially an internship and ultimately was hired as sustainability planner. And since then, I've worked through a series of positions and am currently chief planner for the city. And since the urban planning profession isn't something a lot of people are familiar with, I wanted to share a brief video that I had helped put together with some of my students, some of my colleagues at the University of Michigan when I was there.
Urban planning is the marriage between people and their surroundings. It is how the built environment influences human behavior and interaction.
Studying urban planning is daylighting the frameworks and systems that shape our cities and the lives of people within them. The built environment and our human place within it aren't accidental. Urban planning is about peeling away the gloss and brushing away the grit to grasp that cities are human creations that we all have the power to change.
What does an urban planner do? Well, don't you ever wonder who decides where the bus stops go? I do. I decide. With other people's help, of course.
Urban planning shapes where we live, work, and play, all of which affect our health. It requires us to be intentional about how we plan, design, and distribute those spaces in order to promote better health and social outcomes.
Planning is based in the belief that cities and communities are malleable products of developers, governments, and individuals. Planners inform policy and dissect the complex social and physical fabric of urban environments. Urban planning is shaping the built environment at a scale that is relevant to the human experience.
So I hope that that was helpful for getting acquainted with the field of urban planning. It has an urgency to it these days because of the growth patterns around the world. 3.7 billion people, that's about half the world's population, a little more than half, live in urban areas. And that number is expected to double by 2050, which it puts increased importance on how we design these spaces and how we interact with the land around it. On the screen here is a picture of the city of Lancaster, the red being the boundary to the city. And we're all asking ourselves these days, what does this urban growth pattern really mean for Lancaster City and the surrounding community? How does it impact the farmland surrounding the city and the resources that sustain us and how we move across the landscape? Currently, Lancaster is a fairly compact, walkable city, efficiently delivers water and sewer to densely planned residential neighborhoods, and pulls water from the Conestoga River that runs through the southeast of the city. And what will be the future relationship of the city and its relationship to the surrounding land? And that is really the fundamental question of the comprehensive plan. I want to provide a little bit more local context. The comprehensive plan can sometimes feel esoteric and distant, so I want to put this in real terms for you. The city of Lancaster is growing very quickly. We have more than 2,000 units planned in the planning pipeline inside the city right now. And this is a rendering of one of the projects that's proposed. It's a 20-story retirement community by Willow Valley, just one block south of Central Market. This proposed project has already received several key approvals, and including permission to build higher than usual. The comprehensive plan would be helping to make important recommendations for whether projects like this are desirable or not. And if they are permitted, what would the kinds of amenities and impacts be to the community? There are real physical implications for the comprehensive plan, and this is just one of a dozen major projects that we have going on in the city right now. If these units come to bear in the city within the next 5 years, we could potentially be seeing a 5% population increase in the city, assuming that more than one person may live in many of these units. And currently, this is actually a conservative estimate. We could end up with 3,000 people or more in the city of Lancaster, where we currently have 60,000 people. This is an elevation drawing of the same project, just to give you an idea of what planners are often reviewing. This schematic helps us to understand how the new building fits into the existing context of the urban fabric. In particular, this diagram notes how far back the building is from the streetscape, especially the tallest portions of it. And helps us understand how the building interacts with the street grade as it changes across the city. These are the sorts of design parameters that the comprehensive plan would ultimately be shaping in the long term. So what are urban planners' role in this kind of environment? Well, we are often the ones coordinating among a variety of different people involved in the development process, including private developers, the public, boards and commissions that issue various approvals, different levels of government, including state and federal, designers that are creating these projects, people who are permitting them, the utility companies, and of course the environment, and understanding how we fit, how this development fits into our surrounding natural environment. Urban planners are often the brokers of these kinds of deals, coordinators, helping to pull together disparate interests and mediate them towards solutions that will hopefully create a sustainable, safe, and more prosperous community for everyone. The City Planning Bureau in particular has 5 programs to it. Zoning is it sets the dimensions and uses for property, how high you can build, how much parking and where, etc. Historic preservation, this is the second program, and that regulates demolition of historic structures, which cover most of the city actually, and new construction design, architecture, materials, design compatibility. We also regulate land development. This sets up a process by which developments have to be approved, and it also identifies improvements that the developer needs to make to the public right-of-way and elsewhere in the city. We also have a redevelopment program that helps to identify and remediate blight, and a land bank that helps to purchase properties for future public development. And part of the redevelopment program is also creating affordable housing. And finally, the most important topic for today is our long-term planning program. This creates foundational plans and studies, including the comprehensive plan, the official map, housing study, and others, which help to underlay all of the programs above it and how they are developed. I would be remiss if I did not emphatically state that, like many professions, urban planning has a deeply racist and classist history. Unfortunately, these seeds of hate are still bearing fruit in our own community, and far through the legacy of redlining, demolition of communities, of color, the theft of land, and continued economic oppression of Black, Brown, Native communities across the country and the world. The picture on the left is taken in the city of Lancaster's southeast neighborhood around 1970. You can see a group of suited white men surveying a mostly Black and immigrant neighborhood prior to their authorizing its demolition. If you're interested in this history, I highly recommend the late Dr. Schuyler's book, A City Transformed, which details Lancaster City's painful past with urban renewal and redlining. The picture on the right is taken in the city of Lancaster's southeast neighborhood just this past summer at a location not far from where the demolition took place. This is what our urban planning process looks like today. Rather than the neighborhood looking on as we survey, we are asking for their input and asking that they get involved. We include people of color and Spanish speakers in nearly all of our in-person outreach to try to create the most inclusive and diverse process that we can. The only way that we will resist the history of this repeating itself is if we empower those communities who were historically disenfranchised in these processes. I have some demographic statistics at the bottom. Some of these might be familiar to you, but the city of Lancaster is about 38% Hispanic Latino, 17% Black, 7% identifies 2 or more races, and we were also named the refugee capital of the United States by BBC News. This is really just the tip of the iceberg of the diversity that we have in the city, which is an incredible asset to our culture and our arts and our food and in many other ways. And this is something that we're really trying to embrace and lift up through the planning process that we're going through. This is a part of our racist history of urban planning. On the left, you'll see dots that indicate where affordable housing exists in the city. And you'll notice the concentration in the southeast. This is where most of the demolition took place in urban renewal, aside from some portions of our center city. On the right, you'll see the South Duke Street demolition area near where that photo was taken. And this is an area that was looked a lot like the surrounding areas where there were smaller residential parcels. This was demolished and a public housing development was created here and on the corner here, one of the towers for affordable housing. The replacement of units was not one for one. Many more units were demolished and ultimately provided. And then we also have a public school, Martin Luther King Elementary here on the corner. So this just gives you a sense of the hole in the urban fabric that was created and the scale of demolition from the planning initiatives. The city of Lancaster has a lot of planning challenges that the comprehensive plan is tasked with addressing. And this is just a quick smattering of them. We have aging infrastructure, lead paint contamination, 24% poverty rate across the city. In some neighborhoods that reaches 40. Our household median income is $45,000. That could be for a family of 4. We have combined sewer overflows that pour raw sewage into the Conestoga. We have a lack of housing supply and high demand. Housing quality is suffering in many parts of the city, especially south of King Street, and a lack of affordable housing makes it difficult for people who grew up here to continue living here. We have an inadequate transit system. There's long-term community distrust, a need for access to education, and so much more. One of the primary challenges is, of course, housing. This is something that the comprehensive plan will be addressing head on and has, I think, a lot of opportunity to help address. Right now, we have a very low supply, sorry for the spelling error there, and a low vacancy rate, less than 2.5%. We have challenges with affordability and price of units and housing for homeownership. Our quality is also poor across the city. We have limited funds for subsidizing affordable housing, and in most cases, the investment to create the affordable unit does not recoup the cost for the developer. We have rising costs of materials and land. There are regulatory challenges through zoning and land development, and of course, NIMBYism, not in my backyard. The rule of thumb for housing is that it should not exceed 30% of a household's income. I appreciated that our senior planner, Emma, did a little bit of calculation on this. Minimum wage in the state of Pennsylvania is $7.25 an hour. At 40 hours a week, that gives you $11.60 a month, and that would require an affordable unit costing $348 a month, which is virtually non-existent in the city. 53% of our renter and households are cost burden. According to this definition, 21% of homeowners are cost burden by that definition. And for the Lancaster City Housing Authority, we are providing 564 total affordable units. And there are 390 households on the waiting list. I have a feeling this has grown since this slide was put together. We have about 1,000 Section 8 vouchers. 213 households are on that waiting list. Rental vacancy rates dropped from 6.2 to 3.1 in 2018, and our last assessment in 2019 data was 2.5. So those are just some of the issues that set the scene for the comprehensive plan in 2022 for the city of Lancaster. While the plan cannot address and solve all of these community problems, it is definitely a significant opportunity to address the challenges of our built environment. There are a lot of different kinds of issues that I also have not mentioned that have become more global in nature. Of course, the pandemic and climate change and immigration and displacement are major issues. So I don't intend for this, and nor is it reasonable to think I'll address every issue in this presentation, but I just wanted to help sort of set the scene locally for what we're dealing with. And the comprehensive plan is one of many different plans that the city has going right now. And I don't want this to get confused with other planning efforts. The mayor has a 4-year strategic plan that she's launching for her next 4 years. Please register to vote. You have until October 18th. Janine Sirachi is our current mayor, and we're hoping that she gets reelected in November. So please get out and vote for Janine Sirachi. We are also creating a plan to spend our American Rescue Plan dollars and a variety of other planning initiatives throughout the city. The comprehensive plan, though, really serves as the foundation for all of these efforts, and it's legally required in the state of Pennsylvania and in most states because it promotes sound government, civic engagement, and more accountability. So what is a comprehensive plan? It's a document that serves as a foundation to help guide future policy actions of a community. It utilizes community engagement and identifies key values and goals, and it lays the foundation for potential zoning, code amendments, policies, capital improvement projects, collaborations, and more. The plan will identify what topics are most important to residents and stakeholders, and then establish a framework to guide the city's development over the next 20 years according to those priorities. It will be used to help leaders make decisions around policies and programs and investments, and especially prioritize how money and resources are allocated across the city and neighborhoods. It's important that we build equity into the organization of this planning process. This is a diagram that illustrates how we're organizing our comprehensive plan and thinking about it. There are essentially 3 buckets to the process, and that is leadership, community engagement, and policy. And each of these relate back to one another through an iterative process. But what's most important here is that we're trying to include residents in every area of this planning process, including leadership. We've created a comprehensive plan committee of 19 residents, and they have a diversity of experience and background. Many of them are really, your typical city resident that was born and raised here. They have a diverse set of experiences, and we really try to make this as unique a group as possible and as representative of our city demographics. And they are really serving as the primary filter for this comprehensive plan process. In community engagement, we also have residents assisting with us, assisting our efforts there. We're working with community partner organizations, experts, and city staff. And also in the policy area, we're including residents in the policy development directly, along with our partners and experts. The Comprehensive Plan Committee was also empowered to participate in the interviews for selecting our consulting firm. They attended all 3 interviews, were able to choose questions and ask them directly to the prospective firms. And they made the recommendation that Bergman was going to be the best firm, and that is who the city selected. We feel very happy that we were able to involve residents in this way, and hope to do this throughout the planning process. So I want to tell you a little bit about some of the components of the plan, because the comprehensive plan is not just one document, but it's really comprised of multiple documents. First is community values and priorities, and this is what we're working on right now and what you will be contributing to at the end of this presentation. We also will be issuing community engagement report demonstrating who we talk to, where, how many people, what we ask them, and all of the different methods. The Lancaster Today report, I'll say a little bit more about in a moment, but that's really a current conditions report for the city. Future land use plan is another important element, which I'll say more about. And then, of course, creating policies and objectives and an implementation strategy are perhaps the most important. So the Lancaster Today report will really take stock of the last 20 years of change in the city. We need to be honest about how we arrived at this moment and what may need to change going forward. Some key topics will include land use, housing affordability, equity, transportation, parks, and many more. The future land use plan is perhaps one of the most legally impactful outcomes of the comprehensive plan. It will be essentially a map that determines what kinds of uses will occur throughout the city. For instance, high density or low density residential, commercial, industrial, parks and open space, and the mix of all of these and more. I really can't understate the importance of land use relative to the economy, environment, and equity. For instance, Paul Hawkins' book, Drawdown, for those of you who are interested in climate action, includes land use as a major category for emissions reductions. Many of the top 20 solutions are related to how we manage our land for food and forest and other uses. The density and the form of how we develop ultimately determines our everyday lives. Can we walk or bike to the store? Can you access a nearby park? Do you have any forest left for that is viable for local ecology? Have we maintained our historic fabric, etc.? This is just a picture of our current zoning map for the city of Lancaster. It gives you a sense of the different patchwork of uses. Yellow is residential, pink is commercial, brown is mixed use, gray is industrial, and green, of course, is parks and open space. This will be similar looking to our future land use map, although there will be different categories and different orientation for all of these uses. But this is the kind of map that we use every day in the administration of our zoning and physical development of our city. This is just a simplistic diagram of what our priority and objectives and strategic implementation will look like. Community priority that's identified will be matched with goals, and ultimately will identify policy actions that we can be implementing over the next 5 to 10 years. So a quick note on timeline. I mentioned we're establishing our values and priorities right now. These will be up in draft form actually within the coming days for additional comment. We're also working on inventorying and analyzing a whole host of data, including housing and market study and transportation analysis. By spring, we hope to have our future land use plan in draft for the community and partners to comment on. And then in the summer, we'll be working on our goals and policies with the plan to adopt and begin implementation in fall of 2022. And this allows plenty of time for F&M faculty, staff, and students to get engaged with this process. So more on that a little later. So how are we engaging with the community? Planning is a highly democratic process. It requires participation. I should say it should be a highly democratic process. There are too many examples of what happens when communities are not involved, and namely that picture that I showed earlier in the slideshow. Additionally, recent national events have highlighted even further the disparity between communities and their outcomes. And this is really a pivotal moment for the city of Lancaster to live up to the expectations of our community, the needs of our community. So our approach primarily has been to break down barriers of participation, including time, language, money, distrust, technology, disability, so that we can allow for a diverse and inclusive process with language access services. We are utilizing a variety of interactive and creative techniques, trying to meet people in the neighborhoods and the places that they gather, and really empower local leaders and build trust. But collaboration only moves at the speed of trust. So I'm glad we have a year. It's really just a drop in the bucket, really, of what is needed to repair some damaged relationships in our community from decades of misjudgment. Our engagement plan components are listed here. We have project team meetings, comprehensive plan meetings. We work with organizational leaders. We have advisory committee meetings, shaping policy, and more for your average day resident. We have public workshops, pop-up neighborhood events, student engagement with McCaskey, F&M, Millersville, and other institutions. Our online engagement is very robust as needed in the pandemic. And we're setting up a series of meetings in a box where we're empowering residents and anyone who lives in the city to host a meeting with materials that we would provide you, so that we don't necessarily have to be the ones facilitating the conversation, to create more honest and grassroots meetings and feedback. These are just a few pictures of our engagement activities that have taken place over the last several months. We're asking people to map where they live so that we can track the neighborhoods that we are engaging with and ensure an inclusive process. At the top right, we're asking residents to vote on what issues are most important to them using our dot voting method. We're also using art and interactive methods that help break down barriers in age, language, and knowledge. We compile all of this data that we receive through these methods to identify emerging trends and priorities and values. We are attending events throughout the city regularly, setting up tables with information and wearing branded t-shirts and talking to people about the project. We're able to provide language services in a variety of different languages, and that's something that we're still striving to do even better at. We also partnered with Franklin and Marshall's Poetry Paths project for their Poetry Rolls program. I want to give a huge shout out to Carrie Sharon Wright and Joanna Underhill and other students that were involved in making this happen. We are very excited about this. This is an opportunity that we had to take words and themes that emerged from the community feedback over the last several months, and we created custom magnets so that people could create word clouds and poems live on the spot in both English and Spanish. We did this at 2 different locations in the city just a couple weeks ago. It was a lot of fun, and I think continues to provide a different kind of option for offering feedback for us. So we look forward to further collaboration with F&M Poetry Paths as well as others at the college. A quick note on our policy advisory committees. We have selected 5 different cross-cutting topics that are in line with the Lancaster County Comprehensive Plan, Places 2040. This creates consistency of planning and objectives at different levels of government and helps us to better plan our county as well as our city. Those themes are listed here, and they are each cross-cutting themes so that we can include a diverse set of stakeholders at the table and really create robust conversation and different ideas, and instead of creating an echo chamber among topical experts. Thinking beyond boundaries, of course, is getting that intermunicipal cooperation, creating great places, including housing and placemaking and the amenities that we need. Connecting people, place, and opportunities is really getting at access and transportation, mobility, taking care of what we have, environmental, historical preservation, as well as cultural preservation and more, and growing responsibly. Where do we create the growth that we need? How do we provide opportunities for people to continue to live here while adding density that helps preserve farmland across the county? I mentioned online engagement earlier. I hope that you'll take an opportunity to log on to Engage Lancaster and register there. It's a digital engagement platform that we're using both English and Spanish. And we post multiple projects, in fact, dozens of projects over the last year that we ask for resident feedback on. There is a comprehensive plan project on there, and there is a survey open. So please log on and click on step 1, and you'll see you can follow along throughout the course of this planning process. We also have a project website, which is under continual construction, but please go ahead and visit ourfuturelancaster.com if you're interested in more information. So the outreach that we've done so far is hopefully illustrated here a bit. We have about 3,500 residents at the different events that we've attended, both in person and virtually. We've directly engaged with close to 1,300 residents, most of those in-person conversations. I'm not sure how to track the social media interactions, but we've got well over 1,000 and probably many more than that. We've been surveying the community, 300 completed, and that'll be an ongoing process. We have 75 plus social media posts, and that's not including all of our partners who have been helping to promote. We've been at 21 in-person events over the last 3 months, 7 virtual meetings, and then also media articles and radio interviews too, which are all ongoing. This is just since the end of June that we've accomplished this. We feel fairly good about this. Our goal is to engage at least 10% of the city, which is 6,000 people, in direct interactions. And we're less than a quarter of the way through this planning process. And so far we are on track to do just that. This is just one example of some of the results that we've been getting in person. We're asking people to identify what they love and what they want to improve about the city. On the love side, you see that people love the trees and the walkability, the beauty, the bike lanes, the progress that we've made, that it's safe and clean, our diversity and history. On the improved side, people are saying that we need to educate more people, work on street art, need to improve the Walnut Street bike lane, composting, taxes, many issues. And you'll get an opportunity to weigh in on this in just a moment. So how can you get involved in this process? Certainly visit Engage Lancaster and take the survey. The link is on the screen here, but if you Google Engage Lancaster PA, you should be able to find it. Follow us on social media. You can find the City of Lancaster government's page on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and others. And please reshare that content as it comes up. If you're willing to host a meeting in a box, we think that would be fantastic. You can get in touch with us if you're interested in doing that. Attend a City Planning Commission meeting. Our meeting agendas and schedule is on the city website. You can attend one of the comp plan events. You can create a student project. I regularly partner with professors and students at Franklin and Marshall on a variety of projects, and I'm exploring one right now on the comprehensive plan with Eric Usner. You can help flyer the campus. I mean, really, we're open to any ideas that you guys have. Our email is here, ourfuturelancaster@cityoflancasterpa.com. Please shoot me a note and let me know what you have in mind. So that's it for our presentation. I want to move into our interactive survey and invite you to share some of your perspectives with me. I am going to give you some instructions here. So you'll access the survey through going to www.menti.com. In just a moment, I'll have the code added. I'm actually going to switch screens here so that my colleague Sam can assist with this process. So in the meantime, go to menti.com. And Sam, are you able to share your screen? Excellent. So you'll see at the top of the screen, there's a code that you can type in. Looks like many of you are already beginning. So first, we like to collect demographics on who we're interacting with. This helps us report back to the community on who we engaged and what the demographics are, ensuring that we're creating a really inclusive and diverse process. So it looks like we are over 30 respondents, and we've got mostly female in the audience, actually approaching 40. All right, we'll give it another minute here. Okay, we've got good participation in the room. Over 50 now. still with the majority female. All right, looks like we're starting to slow down a little bit. We'll have close to 60 participants in these questions, it looks like. Oh, I thought it was slowing down, but it's still going. We'll give it one more minute as people are getting logged in. Okay, great. We can move on to the next question here. So please specify your race. Again, this helps us to track the diversity and inclusiveness of our process. And these are important statistics that we want to be able to report back to the community on. So we've got nearing our 60 respondents, with the vast majority being white, and continues to demonstrate that we need to be reaching out to additional communities to really engage a group that is more representative of our city at large. All right, thank you. Got 66 respondents on that one. So tell us about your ethnicity. So again, the vast majority, not Hispanic or Latino in this group. 6% Hispanic Latino, roughly, and 1% would rather not say, and that's perfectly fine. Let's move on to the next question. Thank you so much for all of your feedback. How old are you? This will tell me how many college students we have in attendance. Okay, great. So about 34% maybe of you are college students, and the remainder, perhaps you're also college students. I won't make any judgments. All right, let's go to the next question. Do you live or work in Lancaster City? So the majority do live and work in the city, but we still have a good number of people who only work in Lancaster, and some who don't live or work in Lancaster in our community. All right, let's go to the next question. So describe your affiliation to F&M. I think this is our last demographic question before we start asking for some of your input about the city. Okay, pretty representative of the age question too. Next question. In one word, how would you describe Lancaster to someone who has never been here? All right, got some interesting words. I love surprising. I think that was something for me when I moved here back in 2004, and I now have lived here for almost 17 years. Vibrant, livable, quiet, interesting, funky, effervescent, amazingly diverse culture, eclectic, historic, yeah, up and coming. A lot of optimism and positivity here for sure. Cozy and dynamic. Excellent. Thank you so much. We can go on to the next question. Sam, are you still there? Oh, there we go. So please select the top 3 things that best represent why you love Lancaster City. These were categories that emerged from our initial rounds of feedback with the community and as part of our continual refinement of what the community priorities and values are. Small businesses and restaurants are a big favorite. In my experience, people who are not from the area are always surprised to find such a vibrant city in the midst of Amish farmland. And small businesses and restaurants really contribute to that. People and diversity is also very high on the list. Walkability and arts and culture. That's great. Let's go on to the next one. Please select the top 3 things that best represent what you'd like to improve about the City of Lancaster. Again, these are themes that have been emerging through our community outreach as things that are in most need of help. Affordable housing is almost always at the top of the list. I have to say that this is the first time I've seen clean and green air, water, energy, and buildings ranked so highly. And of course, that's something near and dear to my heart. So clearly, we've got a very environmentally conscious group that we're speaking with today. Thank you for that perspective and the work that you're doing there. All right, looks like we've got most of our respondents still with clean and green winning out. Let's go to the next question. Is there anything else you believe the project team should know or consider related to the comprehensive planning process? Be as visionary and as creative as you want here. Please don't hold back. Can we stop building parking garages? Avoiding light pollution. Don't lose the city's charm with too big of buildings. Public restrooms, fewer cars, more art, environmentally designed buildings. BIPOC community must be represented. Climate change is real, and our children's children should be top of mind. More bike racks, future public transportation, better street light at night. What is the vision of Lancaster in 10 years? Yeah, more walkability, celebrating our historic aspects, making it more walkable and safer, keeping the community involved, long-term financial well-being. These are all really great. And many of these, actually, the comprehensive plan can address in some way. Aggressive drivers. Please try to include comment from those who live on city fringes. Yes, that is getting at thinking beyond boundaries. And we actually have invited Lancaster Township into our policy committees too. Identifying real alignments and conflicts of interest between white affluent residents and predominantly BIPOC low-income residents. Yes, very important. Added density, public transit. There's so many here. I'm not going to be able to read all of them, but this is really helpful feedback, and will continue to be incorporated into our all of our feedback, and will be published in the engagement report. So I hope that you'll also consider adding additional comments through Engage Lancaster or emailing me for further collaboration. Again, we are an open book. We're open to all of the opportunities we can get to have these conversations. Taxes are high, noise pollution, yeah. Excellent. So I think that is our last question. Is that right, Sam? And maybe we can transition to our Q&A at this point.
Yes, absolutely. We have a number of really good questions here, and thanks so much to everybody for contributing in this really important and surprising and exciting way to the comprehensive plan. Douglas, the first question is from a student. What advice would you give to students who are considering and interested in urban planning as a career, a topic of study? Any suggestions?
Yeah, I think urban planning is a career that is fantastic to pair with your passions. It's a very diverse field, so there's a lot of opportunity. If you have an interest in transportation, or you have an interest in art or economics, there's a lot of different opportunities. So, really ask yourself, what are you most passionate about working for, and then, narrow the field of urban planning to something more specific that you might want to pursue. Internships are a great way to get a sense of what it's actually like. That's how I ended up in this profession. In fact, I've taken on a lot of interns over the years through Franklin and Marshall. So that is an ongoing possibility here at the city. Excuse me. Last thing I'll say on that is determining what sector you want to work in is something that you'll need to do eventually. Government, nonprofit, or private sector. All of them are very different and unique. Government being more regulatory, of course. Private sector often has a lot of design and finance, and then nonprofit is a lot more advocacy. So, a great question.
Thank you. We have a question here from a staff member. You've shared the Willow Valley project, which is a specialized housing development, continuous care residential healthcare facility for an older population, but one with significant financial resources. In contrast to this, the question is about the old hospital site, which is a mixed income development. And this latter seems more relevant to the city and the needs of our citizens. Are there more projects like the old hospital site in the pipeline? We're told that these are harder to develop, can imagine so, compared with something like Willow Valley. Can you talk about why?
Yes, great question. So yes, you're spot on about the Willow Valley community. That is an age-restricted and expensive community to live in, and certainly does not serve the majority of our residents in the city. The development at formerly St. Joe's Hospital, just down the block from F&M, there's an opportunity there for collaboration with HDC, an affordable housing provider in Lancaster. We are very excited to be working with them on a project there. In fact, UPMC was part of the deal to offer land directly to HDC. And we are expecting upwards of, sorry, I'm doing some quick math in my head, around 150 affordable units to be a part of the overall development in that surrounding area, which we're extremely excited about. This is really the first time in decades that new affordable housing has been built in the city on that kind of scale. And that situation, UPMC actually gifted land directly to HDC as part of the rezoning process. So there was a unique aspect to that development that really helped subsidize those units for future development. However, there are other opportunities on the horizon. I mentioned many of the constraints around creating affordable housing. Financing and costs of construction are among many. On Tuesday, City Council heard the first housing strategy in decades at the City of Lancaster. Our director, Chris Delfs, gave a presentation on that with 5 different priorities within that plan. And also preceding that, City Council voted on allocating $5 million of the American Rescue Plan Act funding towards affordable housing, which will be distributed, based on that interim housing strategy that was presented. So $5 million is not the end of it. It's also not the only bucket that we have, but it is more money than the city has ever had for affordable housing, in decades for sure. This is being matched with other funding in our community development block program through HUD, as well as home funds and other HUD program. So we're doing our best to pull together all of these disparate sources of funding and create a holistic strategy in partnership with the private sector, because city government does not build buildings. We're not in the business of building and maintaining housing. So we really do rely on developers, either nonprofit or for-profit, to help construct these projects. And we could take all of our money and build 1 or 2 buildings, or we can really help to leverage this with private funds across multiple developments. So there are other affordable housing projects in the pipeline too. The former Redmond site on South Queen is one of the projects that is slated for affordable housing. There are others in the pipeline we're exploring. Developers have come out and committed to this. Ben Lesher, who's developing the Stockyard Inn, is one developer who's made a public commitment to providing a certain portion of that housing for workforce housing and low income. So I do expect you're going to hear a lot more about this going forward. Given that we have over 2,000 units in the pipeline, there's a lot of opportunity for us to do that work.
I'm really happy to hear that. I have a question here from a faculty member. Can you tell us more about the city's carbon reduction plans? How do you go about trying to get buy-in from citizens, things like tree planting, rain gardens, pedestrian bikeways, et cetera?
Yeah, that is such a good question. And, a lot of people who work on climate issues talk about it largely being a communications issue. How do we communicate this clearly to the public, create buy-in, help them identify their actions that they take every day with these long-term consequences, which are now imminent and happening across the world. So the City of Lancaster has a municipal climate action plan that is focused on our city facilities that we control. So our water plant, our sewer plant, our police, fire buildings, et cetera. There is a commitment there to reduce our emissions 80% by 2050, and the vast majority of those emissions would be within the next 5 years. Of course, COVID has unfortunately set back some of those timelines, but we are working on updating, especially our water and sewer plants, to be more energy independent and lower carbon. That is really the largest source of our municipal operations, is pumping water and sewer up and down hills and from the Conestoga and Susquehanna. It takes a huge amount of energy to do that. For the community at large, we don't yet have a community-wide climate action plan. The comprehensive plan will really be our first opportunity to ensure that climate action, resilience, and adaptation are taken into account at a citywide scale. We have done a community-wide greenhouse gas emissions inventory. In fact, we've done 2 now, one in partnership with DEP, and that helps us understand where the emissions are primarily coming from so that we can then match policies to do that. Walking and biking is something we're constantly thinking about. And for those of you who have lived in the city over the last 10 years, you've probably seen an immense amount of change in the way that we've designed our city streets. Every development that we review, we look very closely at for pedestrian and bike improvements. This is something that we need to just continue to build and knit together that network. We do have an active transportation plan that is in partnership with the county and surrounding municipalities. There were 3 levels of active transportation planning that was done, and that will be connecting to a network of trails that come in and out of the city over time. Maybe you've heard most recently about the highway and the goat path area. It's actually an abandoned highway that was only partially built going out the northeast area of the city. And High Industries is willing to help construct in the initial segment of road there that will include a multi-use trail for biking, walking, and potentially buggies too, who come in and out of the city for business. So there's a lot to say about that, but I'll leave it at that. Happy to answer follow-up questions.
That's so fantastic. We have so many questions, and I'd again encourage folks to reach out to Douglas. I dare say he'd be more than happy to communicate with you more through the website. As we come to the end here of the hour, I want to thank you again, Douglas, for being with us, for sharing all this information and for answering so specifically these questions. I want to thank again Emily for interpreting for us. Thanks to Tom Simpson again for proposing this event. And to everyone who was with us. There was an anonymous comment which I would really like to share as we finish up. The anonymous comment was, "I'm so grateful to be asked for my input into the city's future. Thank you!" Exclamation point. I didn't write it, but I can certainly echo that. We hope everybody will join us again next week for another Common Hour. Thanks all, and have a great day.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.